I swear I'm going somewhere with the title of this video. I found this totally unknown indie game released in early 2016 by the equally unknown tiny little indie studio known as From Software, who were previously known for the critically acclaimed Monster Hunter Diary, Poka Poka, Iroh Village, and absolutely nothing else. I'm sure you've never heard of it, but today we're talking about Dark Souls 3. All jokes aside, Dark Souls 3 was my first Souls game, and it holds a very special place in my heart. I got it back in 2017 in a Steam sale, and I was immediately hooked. The grueling difficulty mixed with this impeccable, oppressive, and melancholic aesthetic just felt refreshing. Of course, I immediately devoured the rest of the Souls games. I even got a PS4 just to play Bloodborne, and the Dark Souls YouTube bubble only furthered my masochistic addiction to this incredible series. Go subscribe to the folks on screen right now, and then maybe to me. After barely beating Elden Ring's DLC 2 years ago, I stopped playing Souls games altogether. You know, life happens. That all changed some days ago though, when on a whim I decided to install DS3 again. And holy hell, playing this game in 2025 with all of my capital G gamer knowledge is a completely different experience. So that's what this video is about. It's not a critical analysis of Dark Souls 3, it's more just me taking you on a short journey revisiting one of my favorite games. How hard it was the first time I played through it, how long my current playthrough took, and whether I'm still a capital G gamer. Let's get into it. The story of the game goes something like this. Here's these four lords. They don't want to get burned alive to keep the lights on in Lordran. I know you're kind of dead and all, but just go and beat some sense into them, okay? Okay. And with this incredibly accurate description of the story, we steamroll through the Cemetery of Ash. I even got myself this shiny Titanite scale that'll forever rot away in my inventory for the rest of the playthrough. And pretty quickly, we arrive at our first roadblock, the terrifying Iudex Gundyr. I think that's how you pronounce him. I'm not being sarcastic, by the way. This guy brought me so much rage the first time I fought him. He's one hell of an introduction to Dark Souls. I genuinely believed that my game was bugged because I thought that none of the starting classes were quote-unquote good enough to defeat him. And when I finally got him down to half health, this undulation of terror exploded from his arm to shred me into pieces. Obviously, this was a skill issue at the time because we just body him today, which opens up the hub area, Firelink Shrine. Of course, I got no trouble navigating this place today. I used to get turned around a lot when trying to find NPCs before, but today I just know the layout of this place better than my own apartment. But the first time around, it was confusing as hell. Don't worry though, even back then I knew to put the sword that I just pulled out of Gundyr's ass into the designated put sword here spot, so we can move on to the next area, the first proper area, the High Wall of Lothric. Back in 2017, getting my ego utterly destroyed by Iudex Gundyr had me terrified of the rest of the game. I was tiptoeing around, trying really hard not to get ganked by random stuff around every corner. I think just getting to the boss of this area took me like 10 hours, if I recall correctly. Current me takes a chill 20-minute walk through the entire area though, including side content. Just gotta remember to edit this clip out. After some shenanigans, we make it to the boss of this area, Vordt of the Boreal Valley. I don't think this is a particularly memorable boss, but you probably know his theme. For a first proper boss, he hits like a truck and can quickly overwhelm you during his second phase, which he did plenty of times way back when. Today, we melt him on the first try. I'm not saying I'll repeat myself, but I will repeat myself. I was hoping for a 0 deaths run, but this blue knight over here just isekai'd me back into reality with a single swipe, which marks the first death of the run. We'll actually hear a little bit more about these guys, the Lothric Knights, later on. but after some level ups and murdering an innocent old lady, the poor man's version of Anor Londo gargoyles pick us up to bring us to the small Latvian village below. I won't talk much about the undead settlement right now, just mark down another death and let's move on to the next area, the Crucifixion Woods. I don't know why, but Miyazaki sure loves his swamps, and this one's no different. There's these giant enemy crabs that'll only chase you through the water, plenty of not-so-good boys, and a lot of potential for getting ganked. Speaking of, these two bozos that definitely have a podcast in the dropshipping business seem to forget how ladders work, and we quickly advance to another swamp. I was joking with the love for swamps before, but Farron Keep's somehow worse. You have to snuff out these 3 flames to open the way through. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not sure what kept me going when I first went through this place, because even now, it's one of my least favorite areas, because everything poisons you. The enemies, the slugs, freaking water. Naturally, on my first playthrough, I got turned around a lot, I died a lot, and I rage quit a lot. In fact, this is where I also stopped my first recording session for this video, because just look at this. So I went and touched some grass and picked the recording back up a couple days later, making my way through the rest of the swamp. Finally, out of the poison area, we bully another Titanite lizard, before grabbing the weapons I'll be using for almost the entire rest of the game. The Sellsword Twin Blades. Yes, I'm aware that these are the weapons by the starting class of the same name, but just, this whole thing? Don't worry about it. After some housekeeping, back at Firelink Shrine, we make our way to the Abyss Watchers. The first Lord of Cinder boss fight, and man, what a boss fight this is. I hated these sword zombies the first time around. Their whole gimmick is infighting. I always felt like I couldn't get a single hit in, just constantly getting chased around the arena until my red-eyed friend came back to get bludgeoned to death. Surprisingly, even on my current playthrough, they gave me a pretty hard time, killing me 4 times in total before finally succumbing to my study of the blade. With the first Lord of Cinder wrapped up, we return to the swamp, the one without poison, to make our way to the next minor boss, the Crystal Sages. I hope you like boss fights with multiple enemies, because Dark Souls 3 sure does. The Crystal Sage's whole gimmick is that once you beat the main guy up enough, he starts to multiply. He still casts purple magic, and all of his clones casts blue magic, so you can just throw a knife into each of them and they dissipate. So you can focus on the main guy, attack him a bit before he goes into the ground, and the cycle repeats. Rinse and repeat until he dies. For this current playthrough, the Sage doesn't pose much of an issue, but I distinctly remember looking up whether this was a required boss or if I could skip it. Unfortunately for past me, it's a required boss fight, and thus many a controller was thrown before I finally pushed through. But even more unfortunate for both past and current me is the next area though. This liminal space before the Cathedral of the Deep is by far one of the worst areas in any Souls game. It's the Crucifixion Gank, the Swamp Shank, the Farron fuckery. It's just an area with 2 human enemies that are exclusively there to gank you, and right after that another area with like 5 dogs and 10 undead hurling various attacks and arrows at you. It's great. 10 out of 10, because both me and my past self equally hate this area with a passion. And after dodging the self-immolating rage bait, we finally make it to this small chapel where my favorite boss in the game is cowering on the floor, whining about the painting of Ariandel. Quick side note, I won't be talking about the DLC because I didn't really have that the first time I played this game. But also, the DLC includes my favorite boss in the entire Soulsborne franchise, so I'd want to give that a little bit more attention some other time. The Cathedral of the Deep is surely an area of all time. It's a large cathedral, with a few giants, a bunch of pyromaniac pastors, and a little surprise by our friend Patches. Once again, I skipped through it all, so here's some of my favorite moments. Local Florida man punches his desk so fucking hard he dies. Naked man stuck in well gets ignored. Local group of pastors gets assaulted by 3 unknown persons in medieval armor. That last one is actually the Deacons of the Deep, a bunch of geriatric guards for Aldrich's beauty coffin. Who's Aldrich? Who knows, but I remember these guys being stupid easy the first time around and the bane of my existence ever since. It's not that the fight is particularly tough, it's just a bit disorientating for me. Today, with the help of Henri and Horus, we easily flatten them and teleport back to the Abyss Watchers arena, where we can pick our journey back up. and head to the Catacombs of Carthus. Insert a joke about boners. This area sucks. I haven't found anything very useful in the catacombs, at least nothing that's worth the trouble of running past the front flipping, spinning, bomb throwing, and reviving skeletons. This area splits off into two paths. One goes to the next area, Irithyll, and the other into another swamp area. Yeah, I know the game calls it a lake, but it has giant enemy crabs. The water goes up to your ankles. It's just another swamp area to me, and it's about just as exciting. Both the catacombs and its underground lake do have some pretty cool lore, though. There's actually a mod where you can play through what this area could have looked like a couple of years back, and it looks really cool. I just wanted to mention that. I think I lost a bunch of hours the first time going through this area because it just all looks the same, and I kept ending up at the lake. Sorry, swamp. But this area's boss, High Lord Wolnir, was, well, it was another mixed bag for me, even way back when. I got a confession to make. I didn't go into the game totally blind, so I just sort of knew about the big skeleton jump scare. Past that, it's an okay-ish fight. It can get real BS if he summons more boners into the arena, which I want to note, I don't recall him doing that ever before, like, the recording session for this video. I have never seen him summon more skeletons into the arena. Oh well, we break his bling and he's gone, and then we leave the dusty catacombs and arrive in the Boreal Valley. Irithyll of the Boreal Valley. It looks real pretty, but oh boy, I don't like this area. First off, we have this big bridge that you have to walk past, and the first time around, I was completely enamored by the environment, and I didn't realize that there was a giant dog spawning behind me, so that was fun. Sorry, Bloodborne doggo. Your birthright as a good boy was forsaken when you started stunning me while moving around. Also, the cam is dog shit, but whatever. If we don't kill him here, he'll show up at a later point in a far less advantageous situation. Guess what I did on my first playthrough? Of course, I just rushed through it. That's also the reason why we bullied the Deacons of the Deep, because you need this random doll you get from them to actually make it past this wall. Of course, I didn't get the doll on my first playthrough because I didn't read any of the dialogue. I mean, it's kind of in my name. And then the first time I read through this town, I thought I was going to reach my breaking point. There are so many enemies, both ranged and melee. I kept getting lost, and I often couldn't find my way back to where I died. Nowadays, I can obviously run through this area with my eyes closed. At this point, you may notice that I'm really rushing through all of these areas. I want you to note that down for the end of the video. Once we reach this place, the path once again diverges off to the two remaining Lords of Cinder. For now, we're making our way down to Irithyll Dungeon. Most people I've talked to over the years about Irithyll Dungeon remember exactly one thing about them: the jailers. These enemies fart out these gas clouds that shrink your health bar down to a totally respectable size before grabbing you to finish you off. God, how I hated this area. The jailers in combination with a claustrophobic dungeon, I think that's the combination that didn't really do it. Specifically, this area has two identical looking cell blocks connected by two small bridges, which meant that I got lost so many times and I almost gave up once again, but we persevere. Also, I didn't record it on this specific playthrough, but there are lootable, screaming corpses that scared the shit out of me the first time around and alarmed what seemed like every enemy on the map to my exact coordinates. Looking back on it now, the area has a lot of interweaving pathways, dead ends, totally not reused enemies from the undead settlement, and a bunch of shortcuts. But we're just sprinting through it all and making our way to the next area, the Profaned Capital, home of Yhorm the Giant. I forgot to note down anything about this section during the recording session. It's not a particularly large area if you're just going through the main route, but I do remember distinctly hating this narrow bridge section where you get shot by the fireballs while having to do a dance with the gargoyle, but that's about it. If you're trying to go with Seek Vordt's quest, you have to kind of take a huge detour here that involves these corpse spiders. It's a bit rough, but I think it's doable once you've done it once or twice. For now, we move on to the second Lord of Cinder in this playthrough, Yhorm the Giant. I do have a little story about Yhorm the Giant, because like many others, I didn't know that you're supposed to use the Storm Ruler to defeat him. And after many tries, I looked him up and I found out that it's a gimmick fight. And with the Storm Ruler, he's pretty easy. He probably still flattened me though. I've personally always loved giant enemies in games. I wonder where that comes from. But the sheer size of this lad sometimes does weird things to the camera. Either way, he goes down in a few hits, securing us another Lord of Cinder beaten into submission. Let's head back to Irithyll for now. I know everyone will be incredibly upset about me not showing the gross corpse spiders in the following dog gang parlor leading up to this next boss, but I just really wanted to talk about Pontiff Sulyvahn. The man, the lore, the fight. It's one of my favorite boss fights. The second phase is amazing, and simultaneously, it shows my only issue with this game. I'd say this would be the perfect fight if it wasn't for the ever-present input buffer issue. While late-game bosses like Pontiff Sulyvahn, the Dancer, and the Lothric brothers feel, to me at least, like they're designed to punish dodge roll spamming, the game's input buffer system creates a bit of an issue. The way it works is if you press a button while your guy is playing another animation, whatever action you pressed will be stored and played after the first animation is finished. Well, if you mistime your dodge right after getting hit in one of these boss fights, that input gets stored until your character recovers, often leading to unwanted rolls and guaranteed follow-up hits. That kind of feels at odds with the game's otherwise intentional design choices, and I can today kind of shrug it off and keep going, but oh my god, this used to infuriate me so much. I used to get so tilted that I genuinely broke 2 controllers in just my first playthrough. Anyway, Pontiff falls on the first try, and we make it across this large plaza. It's an open space in a Souls game, so you know they'll probably toss some more archers and a bunch of big enemies at you at once. I couldn't be arsed with that today, but just know that this area accounted for plenty of deaths during my first playthrough. Despite, once again, running past pretty much everything, I really appreciate how this area weaves back into itself, both into itself and the Cathedral that we just fought Pontiff Sulyvahn in. There's plenty of shortcuts to unlock to make the run up to the next area a bit easier. Not that there's any boss that would benefit from a shorter run up ahead, but oh look, it's a rotating elevator. Yes, indeed. This game loves to reference previous titles. This version of Anor Londo is filled with a bunch of Silver Knights and Deacons of the Deep. First go around this area was difficult, not nearly as crunchy as the previously mentioned open area. In fact, Anor Londo in this game is a straight wraparound. The big door in the middle doesn't open, so you go around the side, you pay your respects to the giant smithy, dash past the ranged enemies, living jellos, and open the large door from the other side. Of course, it's not as easy as that, especially not on your first playthrough. The Silver Knights flatten me plenty of times, even with the gates of Anor Londo wide open. But for this playthrough, we largely make it through the area unscathed and can try to bring the third Lord of Cinder down. It's Aldrich, the Sleeping Beauty with a serious lower body problem. That lower body problem being Aldrich. I've got strong feelings about this one. I think Aldrich is a good example of how RNG can make or break a fight. I breezed through him on my first try. He was really easy, but then on subsequent playthroughs, he was an utter brick wall, all thanks to a single move. It's his arrow rain ability. In the first phase, it's fine. It's like a shotgun blast, it's whatever. But in phase 2, it turns into a ballistic intercontinental homing nightmare while he keeps his full movesets. Sometimes he'd just spam it. Other times he wouldn't use it at all, which made it particularly hard to learn. But at least on this playthrough, he did it like once and then gets put to rest permanently. And with the 3 Lords of Cinder defeated, the innocent dead old lady that we flattened at the start of the game comes back from the grave to teleport us back to the first area. The Dancer's a really cool fight. I think it's a fan favorite, and definitely one of my favorites as well. I fell in love with this haunting, mesmerizing fight. It's just a slow and graceful dance that picks up speed as her health bar decreases. It feels great, although the camera seemed to wobble around a bit too much for me. Oh well, she goes down pretty quickly. Alright, we're in the home stretch pretty much. We're making our way through the castle, rushing past enemy after enemy. At this point, I didn't feel the need to grind anymore. I'd used up almost every boss soul to bolster my level to a pretty cushy level. The dexterity rush is pretty real at this point. Do you want to know how I went through this area originally? After defeating the Dancer, I just straight up quit the game for a good while. I really didn't want to face the Lothric Knights right after you defeat her, because I thought the rest of the game was just going to be Lothric Knights, and I really struggled with them. And when I finally did return, I remember doing so because I had found a good method to grind out levels. You get to the first bonfire at Lothric Castle and just keep bonking this one knight. And so I spent the next few hours of my life just grinding away at this poor red man, not knowing what would be ahead of me, seeking comfort in a bigger level number. Of course, all that time grinding out levels wasn't enough to prepare me for the wall of damage and health that is the Dragonslayer Armour. Holy hell. How I wished for this guy's armor to become available after you fight him. How I wished for the enemies on the sidelines not to shoot their weird pus at me. How I wished to split my PC in half. Alas, none of my wishes came true. This man bullied me. I had already been beaten, broken, chewed out, and slam dunked into a trash can, but this man did unspeakable things to me. I struggled so genuinely hard with this fight that even today, he scares me. The Dragonslayer Armour is a certified banger of a fight. Paradoxically, despite feeling a strong urge to slam my head into a concrete wall every single time I'd die, this is one of my top 3 fights in base game, DS3. He winds up his attacks for a good while, he can and will combo out of seemingly every attack, and he will carve his initials into your health bar. Yes, the flying drags of filth that surround his arena are annoying, and yeah, some of his attacks will fling you off the bridge and instantly kill you. However, counter-argument, style, look at him. This man is so damn slick. He slams his shield into your face with the grace of a hydraulic press, chops you straight in half, and guess what? This is just the armor, reanimated by the pilgrim butterflies around it. It only remembers what its owner used to do. What a fight. I decided at this point to fashion his soul into a great axe. Not sure if this is the soul of the armor or the soul of the Dragon Slayer that used to wear it, or the soul of the pilgrim butterfly, whatever. In order to make that great axe, we need the Transposing Kiln. Think I'd forget, didn't you? The Transposing Kiln is received upon defeating the curse-rotted Greatwood. So back to the undead settlement we go, and oh, he's dead. I really just wanted to make the boss weapon so I'd have an excuse to talk about both the Greatwood and the Transposing Kiln. The Greatwood was a really, really weird fight the first time around, because I walked into this arena of a boss fight that I thought was mandatory, and then I was tasked with just whacking enemies. Yeah, I didn't even notice the giant tree that was just sitting in the corner of this giant arena. And then when I finally figured it out, it took a bit more of my limited amount of brain cells to figure out how to attack him and defeat him. But let's actually move on to the Transposing Kiln you get from him when you kill him. One of the things of all time for me in any video game is fighting a boss whose equipment I can make after beating him. It's the thing I love so much about Monster Hunter, and it's something that drew me to Dark Souls as well. When I got the Transposing Kiln, I didn't really think about A, half of the boss's weapons are not exactly compatible with my current build, and B, I would have had to spend far less time grinding out levels if I just didn't use every boss soul to make weapons that I'll never use. I'm not writing off the whole mechanic, by the way. I'm just saying I'm a bit dumb, or I used to be, because then I found the Dragonslayer Great Axe, which is so incredibly busted that I used it almost exclusively in all my other playthroughs. But for now, I have already railroaded myself into a dex build with the sellsword blades, so I kept with that. Back on track though, we're taking on the Grand Archives next. Whoops, game crash. That's never happened before. Why did that happen? Anyway, at this point, you know the drill. We're rushing through this area. I always thought the candle head mechanic in this place was pretty neat. Still kind of miffed about the fact that you can't really get that as like head armor permanently. It's just a temporary effect. But oh well. These gargoyles up on the roof of Lothric Castle were always pretty annoying. Come to think of it, they're also reused from the Profaned Capital, where they gave me a much tougher time. They also place a bunch of Titanite lizards everywhere to try and bait you into running into these cursed books, which, yeah, that killed me a lot too. And guess what? The Crystal Sages are back. Maybe that's what crashed the game, actually. because it like tried to summon the... Yeah, whatever. Finally, we end up at the run-up to the little shit known as Prince Lothric. The whole reason we got resurrected. He's supposed to be the next Lord of Cinder, and he just said, "Nuh-uh, not doing it." Fuck you mean, Well, him and his lover brother, Lorien, do put up a decent fight, but surprisingly, we first try. I actually learned something new today, which is that in the second phase, you can just kill Lothric, and it'll finish the fight, even if Lorien still has a little bit of health left. But let's talk about these two knuckleheads a bit more though, seeing as they're the second to last mandatory fight in the base game. Going up against Lorien, I remember thinking, the second phase is going to be horrible, isn't it? And it sure was back then. Lothric already teleports his brother across the arena during the first phase, where Lorien can shoot his very blessed beam directly into your face. He hits like a truck, of course, but I always felt his attacks were incredibly well telegraphed. They're slow and methodical. They kind of have to be, because he teleports around a lot. Either way, Lorien goes down and the second phase begins. Immediately, Lothric, now on the back of his brother, starts casting attacks to throw your rhythm off kilter, adding more complexity to the disorienting teleportation he keeps casting. Another boss I struggled with tremendously, though I originally took a bigger issue with the run-up to them. See, I didn't know there's a shortcut right here, so I always run through the entire long-ass section where I'd usually have some random enemy chip some of my health away before even starting the fight. It turns out there's this section on the side that leads you all the way back to the Dragonslayer Armour bonfire, which would have been good to know the first time around. Anyway, they go down. So we've come a long way at this point. With the Lothric brothers defeated, we place the remains of the Lords of Cinder onto their thrones, bid the Firekeeper farewell, and make our way to the Kiln of the First Flame.
The fire fades. And the lords go without thrones. Surrender your fires. Let him grant death.
The world here is twisting and shifting, all beneath a red sky punctuated by a black void where the sun used to be. I'm sure this would have only left an even stronger impression on me had I played the Souls games in order. We scale this path of ash and debris, and there, sitting beyond the molten, twisted crown of the kiln, sits the soul of Cinder. First time I fought the amalgamation of those who linked the fire before me. He was fucking awful. Someone described him as the embodiment of a human cheater. He just throws every single spell at you. He doesn't have any stamina. He switches between every weapon. It's rough. It felt straight up unfair. Hours upon hours were spent learning the patterns of this molten bastard just to get stomped into the ground, just to try again and again and again. While I was chipping away at this fight, I'd gone down the rabbit hole of Dark Souls lore videos, starting at the story of the first game. The everlasting dragons, the grandiose Age of Fire, the comparatively insignificant stories of the hollows you meet, and finally, that crippled old man sitting in the lap of this giant furnace. The story of Dark Souls concludes not with a fanfare, but a melancholic, tired exhale as you lay Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, to rest. And then, in the midst of this seemingly impossible boss fight, at the end of Dark Souls 3, that same melancholic, tired exhale weaves its way into the theme of this brutal final bulwark. Even though I hadn't played any of the other games before, that moment gave me goosebumps. It caught me off guard so hard that I ended up dying. I was just sitting on that loading screen, shaking with adrenaline, goosebumps on my arms because this motherfucker had used my own love for the franchise against me. What a bastard. Even today, the Soul of Cinder managed to beat me into the ground twice. On the third and final try, ironically, I was listening to Kingslayer. Also, I wrote down in my notes, holy shit, the fucking adrenaline. With the final boss defeated, we take on the mantle of Lord of Cinder and burn ourselves to ashes until another dogged contender wrests it from our charred hands. This concludes our tour of the Dark Souls 3 playthrough. When I finally finished Dark Souls 3 in early 2018, it felt like I had just climbed a mountain. I could swear that I spent 70 to 100 hours just beating the base game. I think that's a good estimate, considering I got the first achievement and Kindle in September of 2017 and the To Link the First Flame achievement in March 2018. With that being said, I want you to guess how many hours this playthrough took. Just a little over 6 hours. I thought for sure that I'd be a little bit more rusted after not seriously playing through the entire game in 7 years. Honestly, comparing the difficulty to Elden Ring, the Soul of Cinder has nothing on Miquella and his hobby, but I think it's an incredible send-off to the game, even if it doesn't have the same emotional poignancy as Pling Plang Plong. It's not the best fight in Dark Souls 3, in my honest opinion. That award goes to this farty old crew in the DLC. The observant few of you may also have noticed how I utterly cheesed the entire game. That's right, I picked up all the stat boosting abilities and pretty much made a broken build. I want to note that this isn't a specific strategy I developed for this video, it's just how I play Dark Souls. In fact, it's also how I play Monster Hunter. I'm not a big smart, I'm just a guy that wants to watch his enemies bleed to death a bit more quickly while taking less damage himself. I think that makes sense, yeah. Some closing thoughts. It feels weird to have played through the game again, especially while remembering how earth-shatteringly difficult it was the first time around. It definitely was, but I knew how to deal with the difficulty in a way that I enjoyed. It probably sounds weird, but there's something nostalgic about that adrenaline rush I still get today when I'm fighting bosses who I know can flatten me for hours on end. I think that was the subconscious reason as to why I rushed through pretty much every area. I knew that any of the bosses could pose a serious threat to getting this video out in like the next year. Either way, I think most of that adrenaline and worry was unjustified and mainly rooted in thinking I hadn't improved as a capital G gamer over the years. God, I need to stop saying that. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Did you play Dark Souls? I want you to think about what games you played as a kid or young adult that you thought were balls to the wall difficult, and upon revisiting them, realized you could just fucking body them. Let me know. I'm really interested in everybody's experiences. Thanks a bunch for watching. Thanks for the 1,000 subs. Y'all are insane. This is like my third proper video. Oh well, we'll see how many of you will stick around for my dumb rants about stuff that's just floating through my brain. If you have any video ideas or suggestions, please share them. You watched all the way through the vid, so I think it's only fair I listen to what you have to say as well. Anyway, that's it. Bye.